Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Matthew 6:10-13. Words that people from far and wide are familiar with and cling to, but what are these words? What do they mean, and where did they come from? Questions much like this listed may arise when you're looking at the New Testament, the second half of the Christian Bible, the scriptures that were scribed many years ago, for people like you and me to wonder about, and then look into just a little bit deeper. Today I'll give you a brief synopsis of the New Testament, going through what the New Testament is academically, religiously, how it became its current form, and why we should all read it, every word within the pages of the sacred text. Let's begin. The New Testament is a collection of 27 early writings. They were written in Koine Greek, or Common Greek. The date range of these writings is roughly between 49 and 125 CE. The earliest writing from the New Testament is 1 Thessalonians, and the latest writing is 2 Peter. The New Testament authors vary, and they're not 100% identifiable because of the lack of documentation in this time period. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were all written by the authors entitled in their names, as well are most commonly known as the Gospels. Paul, the apostle who was born in 5 CE and died in 67 CE, wrote 13 of the other books. The books include Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon, 9 of which were written to specific places, such as the book of Romans, which was written to the people of Rome, and then the other 4 were written to specific people. Other authors include Luke, who was a physician. He was mentioned before writing the book of Luke, and he also wrote the book of Acts. John, who was a fisherman, wrote 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and Revelation. Peter wrote 1st and 2nd Peter. James, who wrote James. Jude, who wrote Jude. And then Hebrews, whom still remains unidentified. Aside from the authors of the New Testament, it can also be categorized by genres. Genres including the Gospels, ecclesiasticals, or gatherings in history, letters, sermons referring to Hebrews, and apocalypses referring to Revelation. The New Testament is a compilation of Christian writings that are held very sacred. The New Testament reveals God's identity and demonstrates how God relates to humanity through Jesus Christ. Additionally, the New Testament provides an acceptable rule or standard that believers can use to measure or judge pertaining to the Christian faith. Also, it is important to note that the books of the New Testament are not in chronological order. As well, they could have been seen as separate, but they came together as a canon, or quote-unquote, a measuring stick, or a standard, that was eventually labeled the New Testament. Now, the New Testament didn't just become a canon overnight. It was through a 4-stage process. Process referred to as canonization. Stages are as follows. Stage 1, between the time frame of 49 to 125 CE, was the composition and reception. Stage 2, 90 to 175 CE, was the collection or circulation, the earliest of that being Paul's letters. Stage 3 was 150 to 275, referring to the need of selectivity and definition, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. Stage 4, 170 to 400 CE, the emerge of definite list, followed by the fixed canon around the end of the 4th century, roughly. A very important man to mention during the canonization process would be Bishop Athanasius, who in 307 CE addressed at a synod or a church gathering, much like the General Assembly for the Church of God or the Southern Baptist Convention, mentioned that it was very important that nobody should add or take away from the scriptures, and they should only refer to the 27 books. This leads us to the criteria of the canonization. The criteria would be as the following: for apostolicity, which means that in order for a book to be in the New Testament, it had to be written by an apostle or somebody very closely related. Catholicity, not meaning that they had to be Catholic, but Catholic meaning universal or universally applicable. Iniquity, meaning that it came from the earliest moments in Christian history, meaning that it's antique, it's old. Orthodoxy means that it had to agree with church traditions. The criteria that you see doesn't really concern inspiration. Other facts to know would include that it was copied by hand, so some of the scriptures did have errors, unintentional and intentional. I say intentional because if somebody was scribing it, they might have decided, oh, I don't agree with this, let me change it. There are no two alike, and the oldest found Christian writing is from 125 CE, labeled P52, and it's about the size of a Tic Tac box. And it was most likely from the book of John, around lines 38 or so. And through much textual criticism and reconstruction, done by a process of sifting and deciding and detecting, it would allow the New Testament to reach its current day form. Now, there's clearly many reasons why we should care about what the New Testament says. Firstly, the Holy Bible is the most top-selling book. Also, the fact that it is top-selling means that there must have been a significant reason for people to want to read it, whether for historical or spiritual purposes. It is historically proven that Jesus was a man, he did walk the earth, and he did do great and marvelous things. The artifacts tell us this. The New Testament is the section of the Holy Bible written after the death of Christ, making it also an intriguing text to read to see how people respond or were affected by the works the man did. Quote, "This Jesus of Nazareth, without money and arms, conquered more millions than Napoleon. Without science and learning, he shed more light on things human and divine than all philosophers and scholars combined. He spoke such words of life and were never spoken before or since. Without writing a single line, he set more pens in motion than the whole army of great men in ancient and modern times." As quoted, historian Philip Scaff emphasized the very thing that was said before. Jesus mentioned in the New Testament had a great impact on the world because of the mindset change provided through its words. Words that brought encouragement, that brought order, that brought correction, that brought love, fruitfulness. The words are the very thing that had the effect. As a curious person that I am, I'd read the New Testament over and over again for the discoveries and findings in its history on what the New Testament means both historically and spiritually, and to make myself a continuous learner who strives to find new reasons to study it. No matter your religious preference, your cultural background, the book provides words of wisdom and guidance that anybody can apply to their life. Whatever the reason you think in the slightest that you should read this sacred text, I would encourage you to do it. Maybe you don't have a reason after hearing this speech, but you just have a tiny feeling deep in your stomach that churns. And that is the call of the sign that you should read it, and you should analyze it for yourself. As the New Testament was shaped over hundreds of years, maybe after reading it, it could shape you. Thank you.
That's only about 20 minutes long.